Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us to this special and for sure very thoughtful e-talk in a format of panel discussion that Cosentino is organizing along with a panel of experts. I am Maria, in charge of marketing for Cosentino Asia. The reason why we wanted to set up such an interesting discussion is because at Cosentino Group, we are extremely committed with sustainability. And now more than ever, after the latest developments with the COVID-19, which may offer a preview of the impacts of the environmental threats in future. Cosentino's group strategy is completely environmental sustainability and to fully develop a true circular economy. In this sense, Cosentino's achievements and commitments to the environment are in relation with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and perfectly aligned with the 2030 agenda. As an example, let me give you some facts. Actually, in 2018, the Cosentino Group invested 5 million euros on environmental assets and 8 million euros expenditure on environmental control and improvement on water waste by recycling 100% of the water used in our production processes. Also, reuse of residual waste materials and use of 100% renewable sources. I could be talking about our environmental achievements for the whole day, and not only environmental, but also product innovation with recycled materials. However, this is not the purpose of this e-talk. So this is just a short introduction on how Cosentino is committed with sustainability. So going straight to the point, and without further delay, let's talk about sustainability with the truly specialists, the truly professionals. So let me introduce you the panel of experts we have with us today that are going to discuss on how to build cities and communities to be more resilient, healthy, green, and most importantly, sustainable in harmony with nature. We are honored to introduce the first panelist, architect Maria Warner Wong. Maria Warner is the design director and co-founder of Warner Wong Design and Wow Architect. Maria has completely a broad range of projects, from bespoke residence, health and wellness facilities, to hotel and restaurant interior design. She's very committed with promoting sustainable design. Maria has taught sustainable architectural design at the National University of Singapore, and she has also served on the RIBA Accreditation Committee. Hi, Maria.
Hello, good afternoon, Maria. Thank you, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Welcome. Our second panelist, architect Theodore Chan, our friend from TAP series last year. Mr. Chan is the director of TIAP Architects, and he played an instrumental role in the design and implementation of several award-winning healthcare projects like Mount Elizabeth Novena Hospital and UHA's Medical Center, among others. Also, Mr. Chan served as a president of Singapore Institute of Architects during 2012 and 2015, where he developed the curriculum for the architectural practice course and the National Competency Standards for Architectural Practice. Hi, Theodore. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here to talk and share ideas. Hope everybody's healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. And the third panelist, architect Jan Follen from WITO, also friend from TAP series. Jan is the founder of WITO Singapore Practice and co-founder of WITO Architects in Paris. Jan, I can see some echo. Okay. Jan is the founder of WITO Singapore Practice, as I mentioned. And well, Jan has built a rich multicultural experience from his formative years in Indonesia, in France, and in Singapore. And Jan has a great diverse expertise in sustainable architecture, culture curation, and exhibition design. He's a frequent speaker on tropical sustainability and museum curation in the region. And in 2018, he was appointed Festival Director of Artifacts, the popular Singapore Architecture Festival. Hi, Jan.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. And our three distinguished architects will be moderated by Joy Guy. Joy is a senior engineer, and she spent more than 12 years working as a sustainability design consultant in the built environment. Joy has a great view of how the green and sustainable industry is evolving today, and she's continually exploring new ideas to enhance the sustainability services. She's also the founder of the platform joyofsustainability.com and is one of the pioneers in the sustainable building design industry in Singapore. Jolie is a truly believer that there is a need to broadcast sustainability to a bigger audience and share about it in a more simplified way. So I am completely convinced that there is no better moderator for this panel of experts today. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. Joy, I take the floor over to you. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. See you later. And I'm sure going to be a very fun discussion today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Since this is a global event, depends where you're going to dial from. And we're so pleased to have more than 300 sign-ups, and we have a lot of people on the floor watching us. I'm sure it's going to be a fun moment together. So I believe most of you are still working from home now, and thank you for being here. And great thank you for Cosentino's initiative to set up this communication channel together, the like-minded experts together, so we can explore this future opportunity and possibilities together. So it's my honor here to learn from all of you, and together let's take this topic, sustainability, to the new level. So we already experienced this impact of COVID-19, and I'm sure it will continue to change the way we live. So I think it's the perfect moment for us to really sit back and rethink. So how to build cities and communities to be more resilient, healthy, creative, green, most importantly, how to be sustainable. So we have prepared some topics to guide the discussion along, but we depend on the panelists, and they are the true experts of this industry. We're so happy and have the privilege to hear from them. So without further ado, I will start from the first guiding topic. So the first topic is about the future design. So we will invite everyone to imagine that this pandemic is actually forcing the government to change quite a lot of things. So there are new initiatives to help to stimulate and boost the economy. There are tried and true methods through this infrastructure investments. So my question here is, for urban cities like Singapore, so how can the city and the buildings to be reimagined in response to mitigate and recover from the future health crisis? So with this question, I will invite Mr. Theodore to start the ball rolling, please.
Yes, thank you, Joy. I think the predominant word that everybody will be thinking about, the buzzword, will be this thing called social distancing. So if you think about it, two words, but the impact of it is rather far-reaching, especially in relation to the way we design our cities and buildings, right? So in fact, as we speak now, I believe that our colleagues in the industry, my friends in the SIA and even in the building construction authority are thinking about new, not space standards, but I would say new spaced out standards, right? So it would involve a total rethink on the allocation of space standards, ventilation, planning guidelines, especially for crowded public typology buildings, right? You can think of the dorms, you can think of the schools, you can think of the hawker centers, the markets, the swimming pools. Really very interesting to see how this thing will pan out, you know. What will a spaced out swimming pool look like? What will a spaced out market be like, right? So it's very interesting. And these are the key ideas that will be coming out. One of the developments in which I'm more familiar with is healthcare developments. So I would imagine that every hospital in future to be designed would have a kind of a staging area in front of it, in the sense that like an open field like that. And incidentally, we have that one at Yishun Community Hospital, you know. It is not taken up for anything yet, but I believe that probably they will leave it as an open space, because in time of a pandemic, you will need this kind of staging area for the emergency services to come in, and perhaps even to fit out emergency ward facilities, right? So, and we're talking also about flexibility in design of the ground floors so that it can react towards pandemic situations. And in non-pandemic times, perhaps they double up as a community lounge of sorts, right? We also need to think about the compatibility of different users. One of the problems we had recently for the COVID-19 was that there were a lot of medical clinics which were parked within the shopping centers. And when people who were not well, when they came to the shopping center, and when they found that they had COVID-19, the whole shopping center was in a panic state, and they had to lock down and had to isolate and all this. So I think maybe medical clinics and alike kind of spaces should not be parked in shopping centers. Or if they're going to be in shopping centers, perhaps they could be in a special zone which is compartmented. The other thing that will come out very impactfully is this thing called the no hands philosophy in design, right? Where anything that you need to use, you don't have to use your hands. You either use your voice, you either use your legs, or facial recognition, right? A simple example, which already is much in practice in the early days, most public toilets had main doors on it, and these main doors had handles on it. Then after SARS came about, which was about 17 years ago, you found that all the doors, main doors towards the public toilets, they had been taken away already. Privacy is achieved by a series of interlocking labyrinths, right? So a gesture like that where you have no hands philosophy in design. I think also we need to rethink the population density in Singapore. Before this thing happened, everybody was trying to think about the 10 million. I'm not so sure whether that's a wise thing to do now. Perhaps we need the economists and the planners to look at it and try to find a sweet spot. Yes, we know we have to develop, we have to grow, but at the same time, already with a population of 5.7 million, we're having so much problem, right? So 10 million, what is going to be the situation like, right? I also think that we should abort the idea of underground living. I can't imagine a pandemic happening when you're in a situation when you're living underground. I think instead the idea of having floating villages and floating cities around our island would be a more plausible idea, right? So I think these are some of the issues which I feel should be addressed when it comes to the future design of cities and buildings in reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chan. So it seems like social distancing gave us the new measurement for how we do the city design. And I like the word of no hands philosophy. So in the future, that's a lot of some new gestures coming in. And then it's surprisingly no underground living become floating. It's actually a very interesting new ideas that we will be implementing in our future design. So thank you. Maria, your view, please.
Yes, thank you, Theodore. Actually, I think it's so interesting because it's so on point with what's happening at this moment. And coming from you, who've been involved with the development of Singapore as a city in so many ways over so many years, I think your viewpoint is really very relevant and very interesting. The problems with our cities and environment and our way of life have been developed over a century. And we knew the problems long before COVID brought the world to a halt. Many epidemics and other crises that affected the world have found us unprepared to cope with the problems and to ensure a sustainable resolution. The present crisis is possibly the most globally far-reaching of all time, and there's no place on earth where humans are not vulnerable to this virus. But COVID has also given us a glimpse of what is possible: the clear skies, the re-emergent fauna, and the quality of family time. But what's most astounding to me is that most of the people in the developed world have shown that they are capable of great adaptability. Those of us who are able to do our job from home are very fortunate, but there are millions of people who will not be able to continue to make a living while staying at home, and this will expose a new kind of inequality, a disparity of those who will lose their job versus those who can continue to do a job. The full impact of the virus and the lockdowns will be more evident in the years ahead, and this will require a response to help enable people everywhere to earn a living and to have access to healthcare and education. But I think we can learn from the current situation, which has enabled us to see the city without traffic, with clear skies, and where leisure time spent with nature and people live a more balanced life. So now is the time to document, to record, to analyze the data about how the flow of human movement affects the city, and to look at this as a possibility. What would it be like if we could sustain a very long-term increase in people working from their home place? How would that have an effect on cohesion, social cohesion, on culture, on the spaces in the city, relieve pressure on public transport, and create an entirely less crowded environment within the same infrastructure that we already have?
Great. I could completely resonate the positive and bright image you could paint for everyone, that we learned the lesson from this pandemic, and there's a lot of new things, and especially the nature, the harmony we can bring to this society. That's even without this crisis, actually we should think about this way to implement such image to our cities. So thank you, Maria. Yeah, and I would like to hear from you.
Yes. But thanks again for having me today. So what is the future of our cities post COVID-19, post pandemic? First of all, I think we should not forget that we should not be scared to go out. Like all of these spaces that we used to go, that in which we used to have fun, to meet our friends and so on, now became those places where we are very concerned to be within. So how can we make sure that people feel comfortable again in those spaces? And so that's why it is like this idea of the design, to make sure that everyone can feel welcome, feel at ease, can move around. And so in that, what do we have at the moment? If we cannot redesign entirely our cities, what do we have at the moment? And what is the place that is left for human? When we have streets that are covered with cars, and so we have seen during the lockdown in all of the different countries around the world that there is this alternative to mobility, that we don't necessarily need to use cars to move. We can use some like slower kind of tools, bicycles, for example, walking and so on. And so there are many cities in Europe, for example, that are now shifting towards that, to take the opportunity of the COVID-19 to remove the cars from the city centers, and so to allow bicycles to come in. So what could that be in the Singapore context, for example, where we need to have more distances between the people, but at the same time, the space that we have is the same. So is it that we can move out all of the cars and we can reclaim the spaces that were dedicated to these cars, to put some tables and chairs, for example, to ensure, of course, the distances between them, but to welcome again the communities in the street, in the public spaces. So that is following what Theodore was talking about as well, which is how to make sure that those distances are kept between the different people in well naturally ventilated spaces. And that's, for me, that's what is key for the future of our cities, this idea of like movement, mobility, and perhaps to go back to the scale of the neighborhood and to do perhaps everything that we need within our neighborhood.
Thank you, Yan. I could imagine there's something more comfortable, slow down, reclaim space to allow more space, and that's a lot of welcome and social harmony in these community spaces, cars and bicycles, so people are more accessible to the nature. And at the same time, so actually from the social distancing, we'll also enhance this, try to enhance this community discussion. So I'm hearing these experts to share about their reimagined future city and the buildings. So I have learned there are very important key points on this word of integration. So in order for the city and future to move with the wholly integrated system, so every system connection, there could be some weak points. Well, taking this opportunity as this COVID-19, they could unveil some of the weak points of our city. It's like circuit breaker, and that's where we see where we didn't pay enough attention, and where we should enhance our design, where we should rethink how we're going to make our city and building better. So this is where we introduce the new buzzword like social distancing, no hands philosophy, floating buildings. So those are the new things we should rethink, and that's give us the opportunity to redesign this integrated city and the future. Great. Is there anyone else? Anything else we would like to add in from our panelists?
Thank you. Not now.
Great.
No, not anymore.
Okay. Sure. Let's just keep going. We're perfect on track with the time. So I couldn't help but notice there was a very bright future what Maria has painted, this harmony, accessibility to nature. And you also mentioned about the sustainability definition into this new city. So that's pointed out our next question is where this pandemic allow us to rethink how do we define sustainability. Well, this COVID-19 has actually shifted the perception of this sustainability. It also prompted us to think what kind of world we want to live in after this pandemic. And I'm sure this one will continue to change the way we're living. So the crisis actually limited many aspects of life. We are restricted at home. We can't even visit our grandparents, and there are limits in our social distance. But we also see positive things here. The positive things could be like we see clear skies, we see cleaner rivers, we also see the wild animals return back to our community and live with this harmony. So my next question here is, what useful lessons we have learned from this pandemic to help us to paint our new future? And how do you envision this new sustainability future, especially in architecture and design and urban planning perspective? And I would love to hear from Maria first.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Look, I want to talk a bit about this new definition of sustainability. Look, at the very heart of the idea of sustainability lies that ability to withstand change and uncertainty and remain in harmony with our world. The COVID pandemic has clearly shown our lack of preparation, our inability to cope, and the alarming inequities in this world. Humans continue to fail to recognize that what happens to our planet and to the most vulnerable people on Earth eventually happens to humanity as a whole. And we've had the incredibly good fortune of living in Singapore over the past 3 decades. And I have to admit that I have never felt more blessed to be here than I have through the COVID crisis. In this crisis, there's a system of governance and a civic tradition of compliance that have been very helpful through this unprecedented period. The presence of law and order and the absence of civil disobedience enable a calm and rational implementation of policies. Although these may not be appealing attributes of a republic in other times, they are certainly convenient during a time of crisis like this. With all the different demands on a project from a client, from the end user, when we look at our definition of sustainability, the only way for sustainable practices to prevail in a project is for them to be embedded in the DNA of the designer and the design team. Sustainability is not an added advantage. It's not a marketing strategy. Sustainable practices must be the underlying values shared among the entire project team that are stewarded by every collaborating consultant, contractor, client, representative, and marketing executive.
Thank you, Maria. I love the definition of sustainability as a DNA. It shouldn't be the one cherry on the top to greenwash everything, but it's embedded in every single design decision and the collaboration with the team members. And this is a very important definition, how sustainability is impacting how we design. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Yan, your opinion, please.
Yes. So sustainability, it is something that is very, very close to my heart. I don't know if you can see me. Okay, now you can see me. Okay, so sustainability is something that is very close to my heart in all of the different projects that we've been handling with my team. And also in a Singapore context, we see the shift, a certain shift from the garden city, the city in the garden, and the city in the nature. So I would like to look at sustainability from a nature point of view, that we need to be embedded within the nature. We need to learn from the nature. We can heal with the nature. For example, I'm specifically sitting in my living room here, where you can see behind me those plants, and that's what is surrounding me on a daily basis. At some point, I can see the plants growing. I can see the birds coming in, and I start to feel connected. So nature or sustainability, as Maria mentioned, is not something just for marketing purpose or just to make something like nice on the rendering and after nice on the balcony, but it should be indeed part of the DNA, and it should be embedded in whatever we do, and how do we want to promote this nature and this biodiversity, because we are part of this ecosystem, and to be connected. So it is opening the window to hear whatever is happening outside, to feel the wind when it enters in, to smell the rain when it arrives. And just by doing all of that, we start to be reconnected, and we understand where we are. We're in the tropics, very like on the equator, so very specific environment. So we need to connect to that, and that will give us the solutions to move forward and to redefine what is sustainability that is just beyond what we've been experiencing for the past 10, 15 years, which is just like putting green on nice renderings for our industry, just putting green on nice renderings, but does it have true value, true social value, and community value? So we are at the beginning of a big shift in Singapore towards nature, and I'm very much looking forward to see how this will be implemented and how us, architect and designer, we can contribute to that, to reconnect basically human with nature beyond just the simple like sustainability, but more like nature based on nature oriented society.
Thank you, Yan. This is a perfect add-on to what Maria was sharing, this DNA. So in addition, the DNA also brings how we utilize our gift from the nature. So we have healing, we have natural wind, we have bright sunlight, we have everything beneficial, like gifted by the nature for us. And to be sustainable is how we interact and work together with this natural gift. And this were built in DNA, organic growth and dynamic view. And that is how we make this city design more sustainable. So I will invite Theodore to share your definition of sustainability, please.
Yeah, I like what Yan said about being close to nature, because that's something which a lot of our healthcare buildings, when our hospitals, we try to infuse nature and natural daylight, and as far as possible, natural ventilation as well, because evidence has shown that if you are close to nature, if you're close to daylight, you heal faster. This is not some mumbo jumbo thing, but it is evidence based if you check with the scientists, right? So Yan is correct. And I think now the definition of sustainability has to be wider. It has to include wellness, because the whole point of being sustainable is that you want to get well and have a better, healthy life. You know, one of the things I watched happen during this COVID-19, I've seen people coming out to exercise that I've never seen before. Everybody is taking out their joggers and their tights and they're running around. And it's fantastic, because I think they're all of a sudden becoming very healthy in the way they live and exercise. And the other thing that is also being talked about a lot is mindfulness, right? We speak about cabin fever. We speak about being locked down. People are getting depressed. People are getting angst up. Yeah, so sustainability has to cover wellness, healthy living, and mindfulness as well. And this has to be brought to a forefront. And I would like to see that a lot of the NGOs and even perhaps the government come and advocate this kind of new expansion of the role of definition of sustainability. And of course, here in Singapore, I think the biggest culprit would be air conditioning. We have lost the plot. If for those of you all who are fortunate enough to stay in Dempsey and the old colonial estates that were designed by British engineers before the advent of air conditioning, they were actually forced to design buildings to be cross and naturally ventilated. Then came air conditioning, then came cheap energy, and everything went out of the window, really, literally. Right, so I think it's time to come back and take a look at not just ventilation, but cross ventilation as well. The air conditioning should be an option. It should not be the default first choice.
Yay.
Right, so yeah. So you're thinking about more voluminous ceilings, higher buildings. Can the HDB flats be a bit higher to let more ventilation in? Perhaps natural ventilation courtyards in terrace houses. I did recently, completed my house, and I purposely put in a courtyard inside, and I think it's working well, the natural ventilation, right? And sustainability also has to work hand in hand with resilience. So resilience means we have to design for disaster recovery, right? I was amazed at the way that the Chinese built up their 1,000-bed hospital in less than a week. Really incredible. Can we do that? I think we can. It's a question of the will. Right? Perhaps it's a good time now for architects to look at the design of container wards, ward containers that can be turned into wards and emergency beds, so that in a time of disaster recovery, they can be stacked on and connected on the staging area, which I spoke about in front of the hospitals. We used to have an island in Singapore called Lazarus Island, but now I believe it's called St. John's Island, right? It was called Lazarus Island because in the early days, it was a place where they put the lepers there. But now lepers are no more there, and it's become a recreational island. So the concept of having islands and spaces out there, which in peacetime, non-pandemic, can function as a recreational space. But in terms of pandemic, they turn into a place where you can isolate people. Of course, we're not talking about the medieval isolation, but isolation where you bring connection and you can talk to them and take care of them also. It's time to take a look at some of the resources that we have. We have a lot of old, unused school buildings that are in a dilapidated state, which are managed by the Singapore Land Authority. And I always ask myself, actually, these schools, they make perfect accommodation dormitories, right? You have the classrooms, which can be easily turned into bedrooms. You have the field so that the workers can recreate. You even have the canteen down there. It just takes a bit of sprucing up, and they will be a perfect extension of the dormitories, rather than having a situation right now in which they're all being very tightly placed, right? So these are some of the ideas, I think. So in short, what I would like to say that sustainability has to consider resilience, has to consider wellness, healthy living, mindfulness, and plans for disaster recovery as well. Then only we can talk about being true and sustainable nations.
Yes, I am.
Wow.
Actually,
Yes, please, Maria.
I just think what both Yen and Theodore have just brought up, what is really at the heart of this conversation, so many aspects of it. For instance, the amount of unutilized space in the city. We've seen over the past month millions of square feet of unutilized office space, which actually in normal times reflect millions of square feet of unutilized residential space during the day. So we have this doubling up of spaces that could be so much more efficiently combined into to have less space overall. And I think that at the very heart of the definition of sustainability, it's important to really let this opportunity make us recognize that there are many aspects of it: the social, economic, cultural, physical, and environmental sustainability all go hand in hand, and they're all of equal importance. And to Yen's point about his surroundings, we also feel that living in an environment where we become aware of nature with the rituals of our daily life, that we're always surrounded, that we're always just within connection. And I think that this is a vision that we've had for a very long time, to create this opportunity in HDB where you green the buildings, where you create more awareness of the surroundings, where you make a more naturally ventilated environment. Creating that awareness of our environment makes us feel more at one. It has very valuable therapeutic effects, and it really does manage anxiety, stress, and our sense of connection to the world and to the world around us. So I think that all of these points that have been brought up go very well to reinforce the definition, defining what sustainability really means.
Thank you. The three experts, actually, we can see that they are sitting in the front line of this design and giving us the new definition of how future sustainability will impact our design. The sustainability now suddenly becomes a more wider and overarching definition for our future design, and very inclusive as well. So the sustainability includes wellness now, because the healthy crisis now, and become more mindful because people are started to be more aware of their own development and their own personality, and being resilient that their health crisis, there are disasters, and how city and building will quickly recover from this. Multi-usage facilities, we need space to create social distancing. So we need to reuse and how to best use our existing facilities to have multiple usage as well. I love this interaction and how our experts are sharing the very brilliant view of this. So, and also I can notice that there are also our experts from the floor are posting questions for us. Let's just take a moment to address some of the questions from the floor. So I see this Maxine Chen asking, do you think we could achieve space out building designs by reconfiguring existing spaces, or would it require a lot of new construction? So I guess I will pose the question to Theodore first, and you can add in, the rest can add in later.
I think we definitely can, but it is not going to be an easy choice, right? We have been, in a way, very used to tight spaces. It all boils down to the economics, exactly. So it's going to be a very tough choice, because if you're going to have spaced out design, it means you have more, in general, you have more facilities, more square meter per person, and that's going to cost money. Okay, it's going to cost increase in cost. People have to pay more for services and all this. So it will affect growth. I have no easy answers on that one. I think this thing about the blue skies and all this, yes, it's beautiful to see the blue skies and the clouds are happening. There's no pollution, but on the downside, there are people losing jobs, the economy is shrinking and all this. So perhaps I think a question of adjusting expectations is very important. So not just the physical aspect of just creating more space, but we need to see how it affects the economy, right? So there's no easy answers, but this is something which I think we need all the brilliant designers, we need all the brilliant economists and all the planners to come in to see how we can strike a balance to having spaced out design and perhaps not grow so fast, right? Take our time in growing. And everybody has got to manage their expectations.
But Theodore, do you feel that currently what we're seeing is millions of square feet of residential space converted to offices, and they're functioning as office spaces? Some of them are effective and successful office spaces. Many of them may be compromised and not very effective. But if we were to allow more residential spaces to be used as workspaces, and then we were to allow more workspaces and commercial buildings to be used as residential, we could then spread the population out. And instead of having two areas, one for your day, one for your night, we actually have more space for your day and night. I think that the wasted space, doing an analysis of space utilization and analyzing overall in a big data way how space is used through contact tracing, I think that they've been able to gather enormous amounts of data, and they will be able to tell which are the empty spaces in the city, which are the spaces that are going to waste at the moment, what is underutilized. And I think zoning and replanning spaces and expanding the way that planning allows you to utilize space could actually yield, without building, a lot of new useful spaces.
Yes, I think I agree with you totally, Maria. But you will realize, I think the biggest challenge is not coming up with the design, but getting people to accept the new lifestyle. That would be the biggest challenge. How do you wean off this kind of mentality that spaces need to be tight, and how do you wean off and accept the new economic challenges?
I was about to say that as well. It is like we have great ideas, and of course it is something that we want for the future of the cities. But as we know, the first roadblock it is the people, like to make them changing their mindset in a sense that I live here, I work here, and then I travel a certain distance to go from point A to point B because of different market forces as well, because I prefer living in a house with a garden, or I prefer living in a neighborhood where my parents are from, and I will be going to work because the workplace, I chose a company to work within, but not because they are positioned in that part of the city, but more because I want to work with these people. So now it is more that, and we've been experiencing that, it is breaking all of this mindset to allow people to work from home. And if I can share our experience, for me as a business owner, it was difficult to do that shift because I was concerned about that for my staff, for myself, about our productivity, because we've been telling us that to produce and to be efficient, it is to be together. And that's the best way to do it. That's the fastest way to do it. And so we face all of these challenges until government said, now you have to stop. Now you have to separate. Now you have to work from home. You have to work remotely. You do it. And then you have to change. It is tough. It is difficult. And I wouldn't say that it is easy until now, but we do it and we adapt. You mentioned earlier, Maria, about this level of adaptability. So that's what we are doing. So with that regard, if we see that we could adapt in such a short amount of time to this new system, so then we need to rethink indeed how we live, how we work, how we play, and the space that it requires within the city. And more importantly, to ensure that all of that it is still human oriented and not driven just by functionality, but by human.
So may I add that I want to reinforce that there's data coming out of this, millions of different resources of data coming out. And this could be possibly the biggest experiment of all time and, of throughout humanity, of so many millions and millions of people working from home. If we were to find that possibly 30% of the population could work effectively from home, that would have a massive shift in our need for space in the commercial environment. It would also change the way residential architecture and planning and landscaping occurs. It could be really transformative. And I think that just that data is going to take years to process. But I think it's something that architects should really look into working closely with. Students, researchers, universities should take this information and see how they can test out different visions for different prototypes of new, urban archetypes, urban structures and typologies of work and home environments. We've seen it 3 or 4 times in our lifetime that the city and the URA has even experimented with the home, what are they called, home work environments. And those spaces didn't really take off as much as we anticipated because you could only have 2 or 3 people working in one home working environment. but they may want to reconsider now and expand that to 10 or 20 people. The obvious one is the frontline workers, the machine workers, the big equipment and infrastructure workers who have become the heroes of the COVID story. I think the most fascinating thing is this complete reversal on who are the most valuable members of society. Who are we most dependent upon? This has really uncovered the realities of how the people who stock food, the people who get us our medication, the couriers, the delivery, all these food companies that provide for us while we work from home has really changed our perception of value of people in society. And I think it's time we really looked very seriously at how we've been misreading the nature of society in the past.
Thank you. Thank you. And I can see that there are a lot of questions popping up, and some of them we are already addressed. So just now, Ian and Maria has successfully pointed to the next agenda we're about to go in, which is the business operation. And then when there's certain pandemics affecting us, some of the business are heavily affected, and some of the business are trying their best to adjust to this new crisis, and some of very successful examples here. So I would love to hear from Yan first, who is very close to this effect, and to share your experience and your opinions that how business could survive from such crisis.
Yes. I started to talk about it just now. So us, we are a small team. We are a team of like 10 people, 10 plus people. So I will talk like from experience of what we have like experienced within the office when we had to organize the work from home, and to do that you need to make sure that everyone has a safe place to work from their home. Fortunately, my team has a safe place to work, but after that you have of course a lot of differences. Like, do you work with your siblings within the same room or your parents? Like, is it comfortable? Can you focus? Can you concentrate? And after that, it is also the main difficulty when you are a designer is that you need to be together. Like something that, like I come from another era, a bit older, where basically I learned to sketch, to draw. And so the best way to convey that to other people, I mean to your team, it is of course to draw, to sketch an idea. When you are remote, you can no longer do it. So how to make sure that you still connect, that you can still bring ideas to others. And the other difficulty is that for some people it works to be alone, that they like to be alone, and they really enjoy it. Some others don't. Some others needs to be connected. And especially the younger designer, where when you're in an office and that you talk about something, someone else can hear, can listen, can learn from it. So will new technology enable us to do that? Something that is as simple as participating or listening to a conversation that is not directly to us. And that's for me the main element that will truly change, because now it is very one-on-one, or what we are doing today, this kind of like webinar or e-talk or e-conferences, but how it is for the day-to-day operation, where basically when you instruct someone or when you talk about something with someone, can the other listen and learn from it? And that's, for me, the main challenges of the workplace, or the future of the workplace in the design or for the design industry environment, and especially for the younger designers.
Thank you, Yan. It's not easy, but thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah.
So, Maria, I'm interested to know how you're adjusting to this new work norm.
Well, okay, in our case, we tried to use the time that we had to prepare as much as possible. Since late February, our team started to have discussions together where we started to look into and consider the possibilities. And we always knew that at some point, the likelihood was that we would all have to work from home. So we were trying to figure out when and how and under what circumstances, what the criteria would be for working from home when suddenly, the circuit breaker came on board and it was decided for us. So that was something beyond our control. I have to say that if we had all been given a few more months to prepare, the industry would have helped us to develop a lot of products. And I'll give you an example of what that means. We moved into a new office about 2 years ago from a very, very small office, which would not have been sustainable at all had we still been there, because it was a very crowded space. Our new space is very, very spacious, but we also have an office in Manila and we have an office in London. And so we have been collaborating. When we developed our new office, we made a decision to use all cloud-based technology, to have virtual conferencing, to have all kinds of virtual collaboration systems set up in our office so that we could collaborate with our colleagues and other consultants and clients in other places. So we have already been trying for many years, actually, to increase the collaboration coefficient in our work. So although it caught us by surprise, we're quite comfortable with cloud computing. We're very comfortable with the virtual desktop. We have VPNs and we have the whole system. And I'm very thankful to my team, one person in particular who has spearheaded and stewarded us into this new era. We're lucky. And it's all because we were moving to a new office that we adopted all these new technologies. But I'm afraid most businesses have not adopted those yet. You know, the idea of all cloud-based computing, all, virtual work, everything is in the cloud, is not something that most industries have moved to yet. IBM has identified this as the biggest business growth potential of the next 5 years, because suddenly businesses are going to realize we need to move to the cloud. We need to be able to work from anywhere. We had vulnerabilities that we can overcome with technology. So we've used some of them. Frankly speaking, I'd say it's not great. My wish was to start off by having video conferencing as a daily, all-day thing. I said, let's recreate a virtual office where we all feel like we're together. But the fact is, in the Philippines, some of our colleagues don't have good enough internet to sustain that connection all the time. Even here, some of our colleagues don't have cameras on their laptops, or they don't have good video conferencing. They don't have a space where they can be alone away from their families and children in order to have a face-to-face meeting. So there, of course, are many challenges. But again, as I said, people are adaptable. Everyone has worked very, very hard to keep going, to get their work done. And I think there has been a lot of collaboration. But what this has shown me is that it's so worth it to invest in the technology of the virtual connection and the collaboration technology, because it will enable us to work, anytime, even when this is over. And I don't think it's ever going to go back to the way it was anyway. It's always going to be different going forward. And for us, 90% of our work has always been outside of Singapore. We travel a lot. So the idea that we've been grounded for 3 months has been very different and has really pushed us into much more effective collaboration with clients as well in terms of presentations. So I think that it's really going to be a challenge. And the thing that I wanted to actually share with you in a recent family conversation that I was having, we were trying to set up our Zoom and we were trying to get the laptop into the right position. We were trying to get the technology all going and everything set up. And I said to my son, I think we have a structural problem with where the laptop was. And I said, no, I think it's a technical problem. And then my son said, no, mother, it's a generational problem. Their generation, they don't care where the computer is and what the angle is. And they don't care about that. They just do it. They do it all the time. They're so used to doing everything from their laptop. And for us, it was such a drama to get the software and get everything set up. And they were like, you know what? It's just generational. So I do think there's going to be a generational problem. And I think that for those of the older generations, we need a lot of education, a lot of support and encouragement to help people get comfortable, to be able to trust in the technology. Remember when Zoom came on, everybody was saying, oh, Zoom is dangerous. Your data is not protected. So trust with technology is a very important aspect. And of course, then there's the big question of privacy, which, for us in Singapore, we don't have a huge hang up on privacy, but elsewhere in the world, privacy is incredibly important to people and they're not willing to give it up. The big question is, will you lose privacy in the workplace when you're monitored and there's all this, surveillance type information being transmitted? As simple as having your temperature taken and having to report your health conditions to your office on a daily basis seems it could be an invasion of privacy. But we have to adapt in order to keep going.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it seems that there are a lot of things for us to prepare technically we have to learn a lot of new skills, and mentally we have to prepare to adjust to the new norm and how we're going to share our information and to adjust to what this social norm is. So Theodore, I see you're working from home. So how was your life like?
Yeah, getting used to it, and actually I'm quite happy about it as well. Second buzzword that we'll be speaking about today, I think, is telecommute. Right, the first buzzword was social distancing. Second buzzword, telecommuting. And telecommuting has allowed, at least for our office, even when the circuit breaker is going to be over, we have decided to have 70% of our staff off-site, means working at the office. At home. It's only the essential guys, and the essential guys would be the admin and the IT who will be remain in the office to make sure the system is running. Good side is that we think that when our current office space, the lease expires, we will not be having such a need for big offices really anymore. So you save costs on rental. Transportation cost comes down. You get a greener footprint, right? Because there's no travel time. And then I like also to pick up the point that Maria mentioned about having homes that are designed to have an office component. And that's really very important, right? To have this home office component within residential developments, not just a room, but provided with all the great Wi-Fi and a small little compact office within your home as well.
Yeah.
And that would be, if you ask me, that would be more important than having a bomb shelter in your house.
Yes.
Because the new enemy is not warfare or shrapnel. The new enemy is viruses. Right. So I think we need to rethink the usefulness of the bomb shelter. Perhaps that bomb shelter, the space for the bomb shelter could be given up for a survival store or even a home office as well, right? So the work from home model, for us, it has made us work harder because we don't have travel time. So the in between meetings is like 5 minutes only, right? But we have to be careful because you can spend the whole day in front of the screen, and that may affect you psychologically as well. And also, I think businesses will now have to talk about adopting six-wave thinking. Now, let me explain what is six-wave thinking. Six-wave thinking is the current wave of technology that we are going through now. Okay, it is to leverage on digitization, to leverage on very big computing power. Maria talks about getting data. Yes, that will require a lot of computing power, which we have. And how to interpret this data. So 5G is going to be very big. Whoever is going to get 5G first will be king, right? The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, all this you will see pervading into our industry, also in the way we build buildings and the way we design buildings. So the idea of bits are global and atoms are local. I mean, you look at this conference now, if without digitization, we will not be able to reach. Theoretically, this conference can reach 1 million people if we wanted to, right? And so can our lessons, our webinars, our knowledge base, right? Everything will have to be thought about it in this aspect. Look at the way schools are going now. I think schools will soon go the way as libraries. Libraries are no more repository for books because nobody reads books anymore. Your book is your mobile phone, right? A library becomes a social space. So that kind of analogy, I think, can be transported into the way we design schools. But we also have to take care of the social aspects, how kids interact with each other, rather than just through the mobile phone. Right. So it's a very exciting time for designers to resolve this conflict between space and social needs.
Can I react to that?
Sure.
So yes, it is great, all of this technology and how we can move with all of this, but we are human. We are human, and there is a lot of interaction. There is a lot of learning process that we can have in between two discussions, that we can have, as we say, like between doors and so on. So having everything remote, again, it is not everyone who can afford for that, who can have access to that. Going like fully technology to see what is exactly also the impact of that onto the planet, because increasing the movement of like data, emails, heavy elements like this also have an impact on the planet and the need for energy. So So yes, it's not an easy solution. So we need to balance well can we work from home? Yes, but how? Is it safe? Because once we work from home, there is also we enter into the family aspect. It's not also everyone who wants to stay home alone. It's not everyone who has a family. You have some people who are singles, and so by going out for work, it is also a way to mingle, to feel connected to the society. So work from home can also be equal to isolation. So there is a high risk in that, where I see many of my friends who are single and that basically they have not been interacting with anyone for weeks because they are isolated. Like by being locked down, they're really isolated. So it is important that yes, we can change the way of working, we can change the home, but it's not everyone who can afford for larger units, and it's not everyone who can afford to have access to high-speed internet and to have access to data. So yes, we can go towards that, but we shall not forget that we need those human interaction, and how those human interaction can still happen although we are in this pandemic situation.
So actually, there are two things that you two have brought up. Yen, you talk about people who live alone, and I think that I often think a lot of my friends who are single, they have a perfect life. They're very busy. They socialize so much, and then they have time to themselves when they live alone. But this has changed everything. And similarly, Theodore was talking about books. People don't need books anymore, so the library has disappeared. But actually, this situation of living at home, the time that we've saved on transportation to work, and the efficiencies of working in one place where we live, has actually given us more time for leisure activities, more time to take walks and to interact with nature. I've never seen more people taking walks in my neighborhood as well. It's incredibly crowded at a time like this because everybody's out with their children, interacting. They're not interacting with each other, but they're with their own families. But we're also going back to reading books. And I'm so thankful for all those books that I had from many, many years ago, because now it's not that I didn't want to read books. It's just that I didn't have the time to sit and read a book. So I'm hoping that the change, gradually we will see things like people are learning to cook. Everybody makes banana bread. Everybody's in the kitchen. People are doing things at home that they never did before, picking up interests, wonderful opportunities to pursue personal interests, which they didn't have the time for before. So I think that as we see this change happening, we're going to see many, many opportunities. You're right. It's a great opportunity for time for business opportunities and design opportunities, and many things can come of it. Of course, there will be challenges, the mental health and a lot of wellness challenges and healthcare challenges that will come as a result of it. But again, it's going to be a younger generation who's been equipped with a totally different set of tools who will actually be addressing and solving these problems. It's going to be a time of incredible opportunity, I think.
Thank you. It's lovely that we can see different school of thought and how we put the things at two sides of the coin. So there are parts that the staying at home maybe potential cause some social or mental problems, but at the same time, because saving of the community, the communication time, like the commuting time, also allow us to have more accessibility and time to the nature. And also architecture design should be capture more about the healing part. So that's where also can address this stay-at-home healing mentality issue. So at the same time, I think there's a mutual balance we're also willing to achieve, that some of the time we can work from home and sometimes could be more efficiently group everyone together to share the knowledge and to increase the productivity. So this is different ways we can test and run and start to explore how we're going to work more efficiently together in the future. So that's lovely discussion today. I'm very mindful about time, and also I can realize that there are a lot of questions posted from the floor. So we may not really have time to address everyone, but because our panelists already viewed the topic. So I would like to wrap up this discussion now. I mean, it's really a very, very good point, and sad that the time is the closing time is reaching soon. So the ending point, we would like to invite the panelists to think about. There are a lot of uncertainties here we always talk about. we didn't expect such a long circuit breaker. We didn't expect have to work from home. I didn't expect I couldn't even visit my friends, and there are a lot of things was unknown. So people even lost their jobs. People also have different change of career. People think a lot of things, and many people are feeling fear. They're feeling worried. They feel the uncertainty. So I would like to take the opportunity, like to ask the panelists to wrap up this session today. It was a very fun discussion today. But in this kind of uncertain environment now, what remains certain and what remains positive? What could you address to our audience today so they can walk away with positive and firm and certainty, something bright for them to walk away from today's panel discussion? I will invite Yen to start first.
Okay. So, before talking about something positive, we can talk about something negative. So positive will be even more positive. It is true that our cities have evolved quite fast, quite dramatically. When we see the level of density of Paris, for example, when we see Jakarta that has grown and grown to take over some land outside of the city itself. Our metropolises in Southeast Asia have been verticalizing, have been densifying. So, but that is not necessarily the issue or the cause of the problem of the COVID-19, because many people are saying, oh, it's because of the high density that basically we're having all of this issue of COVID-19. It's a pandemic, yes. Our cities are what they are at the moment, and yes, we need to move forward and to see it is not that we need to erase what we've been doing in the past and build something brand new somewhere else, like some other countries have been doing, and it is not necessarily the right solutions. So we've been talking about all of that since the beginning on how we can repurpose, rebuild, reorganize how we interact with each other. The positive things or the positive takeaway is that, and I want to believe that it is positive, is that we are human, we are social animal, we cannot live without each other. We are craving for seeing each other again, for hugging each other again, for being able to just to be with each other, our families, our parents, our friends. I was watching the other day some videos of concerts, and oh wow, that's felt so great. And perhaps we will be able to reorganize that in the future, to reconfigure those kind of moments of sharing, of having fun together. We have all experienced and tried e-drinks, e-party, e-dinner, and e-dinner, and so on, because it is safe, but we still miss that feeling of being together. So for me, the positive things in that is that we know what we want, we know where we want to go, and we will be fighting for it. We'll be fighting for not necessarily going back to what it used to be, especially not necessarily going back to a capitalistic way of living and working. I had to say it. But more like we know what we want. We want to be together. We want to be able to share those very precious moments together. And it is us, designers and architects, who should lead that, who should initiate that, to ensure that people will be again feeling safe and comfortable in going back into the spaces that we have always envisioned for people to have fun and to be together. So that's for me the most positive thing, is that we will not give up, we will continue, and we will find solutions to make things happen together.
Great. Thank you. Remain the wish and looking forward for the reconnection. Nothing replaces a warm hug and the human connection. Theodore, please.
Okay. First thing is, I don't want anybody to worry, especially the architects and designers, because whatever happens, we will prevail. We will be needed always, okay? That is the most important thing to remember. And why? Because the challenges are immense. And when there's a challenge, architects and designers will rise to it. Overall, our carbon footprint of the industry will be reduced. So it's good news for the environmental campaigners. And for me, it was a gargantuan wake-up call. While I feel terrified at the future prospect, I also feel a certain pioneering spirit, a call, because civilization as we know it today is not going to be the same ever again. So what we need our best architects and economic minds to really eyeball our economy, our environment, and all its sectors, to recalibrate what we've been doing, to reinvent, to reevaluate our population density. Is the 10 million the way to go? Do we need all those huge super scale developments? Now that travel is not going to be coming back the way it is, I'm not so sure we should go ahead with those huge airports and terminals and all this, right? So difficult times ahead, but also great design opportunities ahead, especially in the area of productivity, automation, and robotics in construction. Because more than ever before, there's a pressing need to wean off this idea of cheap labor, intensive labor, right? So we're talking about automation, digitization in construction, the integrated digital delivery. The Building Construction Authority was talking about that only, but they were just talking. So now I think you will see that we're going to move fast and furious, right? So you're going to see prefabrication, very much intensive prefabrication. You're going to see 3D building printed components, 3D printed building components, right? So we need to look at their structural aspects. We need to look how fast we can manufacture them so that we use as little labor as possible. Buildings are going to be assembled. They're not going to be constructed in the traditional way, right? You're going to have robot operators instead of construction workers, right? And that would really see the respect of the construction job and the construction industry come up. And when the construction industry comes up, which it will, a matter of time, and like I said, the architects will prevail, the designers will prevail, we will always be needed. So hang in there.
Thank you for the encouragement and how Theodore was sharing that what should be prepared and for the future change. Maria, thank you. Please share your view and conclude this session for us.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank all the participants who sent their questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time to address all of them, but I've read through and there's some really interesting questions there that I wish we had the time to get into, and I hope we have another occasion to do so. But particularly to the very young architects and the young people who are starting out in their careers, who are asking valid questions like, how would young people be able to afford to have a space to work? And it just brings to mind so many questions about how the younger generation could benefit most from a rethinking of planning. Imagine if you could find your first job and they provided you with a workspace with a living space. It would be a great, opportunity to make better use of the space and a great way to help young people get started. I've also seen that there's a lot of inequality and a lot of injustice that has been revealed through the whole experience of COVID, and it's opportune for us to wake up to it, to see it, to acknowledge it, to recognize it, and to address it. There definitely are some people whose working from home situation is very dangerous. It's very difficult, or it's impossible for them to keep their job. So we have to look at these. We need to know what's going on. We need to understand. Collecting data is not enough. We need to talk to people and connect with people and share our stories and really understand how people are experiencing it. But what the takeaways for me really are is that, look, COVID has not changed sustainability. Okay, at the very heart of sustainability is this ability to withstand change. We've known that this situation was coming for decades. We have not been prepared for it. But sustainability is something which transcends time. And you cannot change this city overnight with great ideas and great improvements. We're very fortunate that Singapore is a nation that has been built with a very sensitive attitude toward the environment, with a very pragmatic approach to development, and with a great plan. The infrastructure is good. This is a city that is on a journey, and as a result, it's able to turn and make changes and shifts to go in different directions when called upon to do so. And that is why in the world you'll see today that Singapore is a country that many other countries look to see how are they doing it? How does Singapore do it? So I'm very thankful for that. And it's a good opportunity to recognize that sustainability is very, very broad. It is not just about the environment. It's really about society, about social structures, economic, cultural, and heritage structures. And it also has a lot to do with how politics plays into sustainability. Sustainability needs to be in the DNA of every designer. I have to say that our education is not emphasizing educating young designers about sustainability enough. And Joy, your point and what you're doing is really important. It's trying to get to the root, the simple foundations of what sustainability really is all about. It's not about the complicated, technical, difficult parts that you need a special degree to understand. It's about the day-to-day prevention of waste, our lifestyle, how you live on a daily basis, the products that you buy, the vacations that you take, the way that you live, the food that you eat, all reflects your understanding of what sustainability is. And remember, the big takeaway and the positive point here is that we're capable of amazing adaptability. The fact that we've all adapted to this situation and we're functioning, although it's not ideal, the world is prepared and will adapt when it has to. So if they tell us tomorrow that we cannot eat beef, or they tell us tomorrow that we must take a vaccination, we have to be prepared to adapt to the changes that are ahead in order to survive in the world. That's what humankind has been doing for millennia. And sustainability is an act of stewardship toward our resources. If there's one takeaway that I would like everybody to remember from COVID, is that what you've seen about the environment, the blue skies, the clean water, the return of the animals, the way that the landscape is taking over in cities, this is something, it's a gift for us to learn from, to become aware of, to use our senses to become aware of our environment, and to use that as an opportunity to heal. Nature is there. It's for all of us to enjoy. It's a great alternative to what we've been doing, which is so much of an overemphasis on commerce. So remember what you're experiencing with nature, and experience nature more. Take holidays to experience nature and enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone. Yes, our value remains the same. Our desire to a brighter future remains the same. And more importantly, sustainability, adaptability remains the same. And thank you everyone for the great knowledge. There's so many valuable points I have learned today. I'm sure everyone else in our audience will learn from everyone. We wish we have more time together. I'm looking for our next time together with you. And thank you for the encouragement as well. So I will hand over the floor to Maria, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody, to Yen, Theodore. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Joy. And nothing much to add after all your statements. In any case, sustainability is a wide topic, so we could be hours talking about it. So this panel comes to an end. So all of us, we can have our dinner. And on behalf of Cosentino, thank you all for joining us. A special thanks to our panelists, Maria, Theodore, Jan, Joy, for all your insights. It has been a very, very fruitful discussion. And hopefully our audience has enjoyed and taken some notes from all of you. You are amazing. Thank you. And have a very good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Stay healthy, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.